Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience podcast. Today I have with me Su Orosa. Sue has a mission to help stressed women reconnect with themselves and overcome their mental blockages. Sue is a mental health and wellness coach who gives women the tools they need to manage their inner critic and put a stop to self-sabotaging behaviors. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on your show.
My pleasure. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Okay, my journey, I guess you could say that it started very early on when my mom was really good at kind of empathizing with people that had problems. So she was a nurse for many years, and she would take me to this house, her friend's house, and her friend had a child who had learning disabilities and he needed support. So from then on, from very early age, I kind of knew that this was the right kind of way to be in the world, to look out for other people, to offer kind of help and support. So that kind of opened my mind a little bit when I was younger. But my own journey has involved a great deal of loss, people dying and relationships, kind of not working out and that kind of stuff. So I've had a lot of kind of internal pain myself, and lots of kind of big decisions like we all do, I guess, as we move through life, which jobs should I take, and am I really living up to my potential and that kind of stuff. So eventually I decided that I needed my own counselling. So I went for my own counselling, and I thought it was brilliant. I thought, wow, I get to speak about myself for a whole 50 minutes. I thought it was great, like really properly be heard and understood. Because I was going through a few problems, obviously, at the time. And through that experience, I thought, wow, it just blew my mind. And I thought, actually, I would like to be sitting in that chair one day. And then that's what happened. I eventually went on and did my own, counselling qualification, trained as a counsellor, and then a few years later, well, quite a few, about 8 years after that, I decided that I also wanted to focus on the future and do some coaching training, because whilst I absolutely love counselling, there was something missing about the journey ahead. And so now what I do is a mixture of counselling and coaching together, and bring in other kind of tools as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I've been to kind of counseling or therapy for some of the stuff that has happened to me in my childhood and along the way. And I think it's important. People are often kind of turned off by it, like I don't need it, but they're not necessarily telling you what to do. They're kind of guiding you through the process to find your own resolution. So I think that's really important in terms of, pointing out. And I think a lot of people can just use somebody to talk to. It doesn't necessarily have to be a therapist, but somebody just to get the things out that are on your mind and kind of on your chest as well.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think you're absolutely right. It's somebody that guides you and helps you to kind of access what's already there, your own resources, without telling you or trying to fix you in some way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think with everything going on with the world, obviously the COVID thing has died down a little bit globally. Obviously, in some countries, it's still kind of flaring up, but being kind of isolated, staying at home is leading to a lot more kind of mental health issues, and mental health in general is kind of overlooked thing globally, I think, and is really important to, get your mind right first and come to terms with things before you can, help somebody else or be as productive as you can be.
Absolutely right. It's that, you can only take somebody on a journey as far as you've gone yourself. So it's so important, as you say, to look within ourselves and to have that commitment to kind of be in the world with an open mind, an open heart, and really look at what our, what our challenges are, whether we hold prejudices, because that's very topical right now as well, that kind of stuff, and really have an honest look and dig deep and be real with ourselves about what we think about other people, where our beliefs come from, why we behave the way we do, like really take time, take stock to look at that. And that's all part of what can make us feel healthier in the world, for sure. Yeah,
I agree. And it's not like
yeah,
with personal things and professional things, it's not a destination, it's an ongoing process to build yourself
absolutely.
over time. And
Yeah,
obviously, the experiences you've had, good and bad, define who you are now. But
yeah,
there's some things you may deal with, in a day, month, year, 10 years, that is a
yeah.
lot harder. And you constantly have to kind of put yourself in check and come to terms so you can be, as functional as possible.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're absolutely right. It is. It's a journey, isn't it? It's a never-ending journey. You know, once you start looking at who you really are and trying to discover who you are, that's it. You can't go back. You know. And whilst they say ignorance is bliss, it's not really. It's not going to really get you that, a life full of meaning and purpose to just live unconsciously. So, and I think you're right. It is. It's something that takes time, and it's a journey that once you're on there, that's it. You don't look back. You can't. And there's always stuff to unravel about who we are.
Yeah, I
Always.
agree.
Yeah.
So, what motivates you to succeed?
Um, I guess a passion for life and living, and what motivates me is that I do have a sense of hope and, I guess, positivity. And so that's what keeps me going. And there are days, I can't lie, there are days when I think, oh my God, what am I doing? you know and I think that's probably the same for most of us. But then I kind of remind myself that actually what I have done in the past and what I'm trying to do is worthy and it's good, it's useful, get a lot of positive feedback. And it's okay to have your bad days where you don't feel successful. But actually, it's about taking a step back and looking at, what you're trying to achieve, really. And yeah, just to keep going, to know that there's always more to be done, more. Yeah, I think it's that tapping into that creativity that keeps me going. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think it's important to have
yeah,
that kind of positive mindset because where you
yeah,
put your mind and who you let in terms of how they make you feel is important. So
yeah,
if everyone around you is
yeah,
negative and putting
yeah.
you down, ultimately, obviously it's hard, but you have that primary responsibility to let that negativity in, and
Yeah.
it changing you as well. So obviously, no one's positive or motivated
All
100%
the
of the time.
time.
And on social media and different other outlets, you see people that are so perfect and are always
Yeah,
happy
perfect.
and
Yeah,
everything's a rainbow and sunshine all the
yeah.
time, but that's
It's
not the
not
case.
real.
Yeah, so
No.
thinking and understanding that everyone's going through something, and everyone
Yeah.
technically sometimes on a daily basis has to dig themselves out of it and just keep going and stay motivated in that sense.
Yeah, and it can be a really tough challenge for people just getting outside, getting out the front door can be really challenging. But I think you're right. It's like looking at those assumptions that we might have, of people, and to know that everybody has got their own challenges can really help us to have that sense of compassion for people. And if we all had that, then what an amazing world this would be.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's
Yeah,
it's it's being kind of in touch and self-conscious with yourself
yeah,
and having some level of empathy and a development over time
yeah,
of your emotional IQ through obviously your
yeah.
experiences.
Absolutely. And developing that emotional IQ is so important. It's how we be in the world, isn't it? And but it starts off with being able to also love ourselves. Although some people find it really easy to give empathy, to offer empathy and love other people, but not themselves. Whereas, if we could do that, that would be amazing because, we're all worthy human beings. And for me, self-compassion is one of those keys, you know, um, and developing that, as you said earlier, a positive mindset. That's all about, if I believe in myself enough that I am worthy, then I'm going to work on myself to start changing these beliefs, the negative beliefs I might have about myself. So important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. So, what's one
Yeah.
thing you may have seen as a weakness in yourself in the past that you've turned around and utilized as a strength today?
Well, I found that quite hard to think about, actually. It's because I didn't dare go there. But I think I know that when I was starting off in counselling business, counsellors typically, we don't see ourselves as coaches. It's quite different. It's a different space, and it was very hard for me. I guess a weakness was that I wasn't savvy on social media, if it's a technical weakness. And I wasn't very visible. So I wasn't kind of maybe developed enough in myself that I would know sufficiently who I was to get myself out there. So I didn't have a website for many years because I think I feared judgment, so, enough to not do that. Luckily, I didn't actually, I didn't need one. I was on directories and I had word of mouth, so my work was fine. But actually, that was a stumbling block for me. So now, however, after having had my own coaches, who were fantastic and very kind, and loving but firm coaches, they really got me on track with that and started to enable me to have a different mindset around being judged and visibility. So now I'm much stronger now in who I am and what I have to offer, and I don't mind talking about it. I'm on podcasts, so it's turned my life around, really, professionally as well as personally.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
everyone's kind of anxious with that, in terms
yeah,
of putting themselves out there. What will people
yeah,
think? How would they look
yeah,
at me if I'm going to be judged? I think one
yeah,
of the most feared things, obviously, we're in a podcast, but also putting yourself out there. So people
yeah.
identified as them being afraid of speaking in front of people more than actually dying. So it's obviously
Wow.
it's a real thing. Studies have been done. And it's,
Wow.
it's one of those things where I think everyone has a story to tell, but if you're the
Yeah,
best at what you do and you have so much to offer, how are people going to know if you don't put yourself out there?
yeah,
So
yeah,
especially with social media and the internet, with the whole
yeah,
pandemic,
yeah.
we've communicated via video conferencing and the internet for the most part in terms of staying connected with family,
Yes.
friends, and colleagues. So
Yeah,
if you're not doing that, I mean, it's hard to even, stay in touch.
yeah. Really is, absolutely. People have had to embrace a whole new way of being, deaf for sure, and technology, thank God, has been a massive part of that. But for those of us who are already a little bit tech savvy, it's not been so hard a transition. But if you haven't been, then wow, that must have been a tough one, on many levels, absolutely. And yes, you're right. How will people know about you? And you don't really have to be the best in your industry. You just have to be, I don't think I'm the best, but I'm out there, I'm doing my thing. And if people resonate with me and they want to work with me, that's cool. Um, you know, so that's enough. That's good enough for me. But you're right. How do people know you're out there? How do they know you exist unless you put yourself out there in some way, and that's difficult, really difficult. There's so much around being judged, and like you said earlier, that perfect persona that people put out there, especially on Instagram, of how you're supposed to be. Well, that's not the case. We all know that that's not real. We can't function like that. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think when you put yourself out there,
yeah,
then you get the right people attracted to you. If no one knows who you
yeah,
are and who you are as a person,
yeah,
then the right people aren't going to connect with you. So if you have
yes,
nothing out there, you may get everybody in far in between, and that's not
yeah,
necessarily your target audience. But if you
yeah,
really tell your story, what you have to offer,
yeah,
those
mhm,
people will hear it, and then
yeah,
oftentimes you get connected with your ideal client,
yeah,
ideal business
right.
partner, and just people of similar mindsets are looking for that specific product, service, or who
That's
you are
it.
as a person.
Yeah, and that's not been easy for me, because I do lots of different things. Do Reiki, yoga, EFT, emotional freedom technique, counselling and coaching, and it's been really hard for me to just hone it down to one thing. And all the coaches, they say, you've got to find a niche, and that's been really that's hard. And to be honest, I still kind of struggle with that a bit. So I've managed to hone it down of, okay, who have I really enjoyed working with that could be my ideal clients? And typically they've been women, although I do work with men as well. And I run workshops as well, personal development workshops. So who are my ideal clients? You know, those I've had to think long and hard about who they are. And it's typically women, professional women, who have emotional, some kind of emotional barriers that's stopping them from moving forward in some way.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
it's important for somebody that, offers a service or a product. I oftentimes connect with their story. So if, I'm a
Yeah.
foster parent, I have that
Right. Yeah.
commonality. If somebody is a business
Yeah.
owner or something that
Mm.
has went through similar things, or my wife and I have been through 5 miscarriages before we became foster parents.
Wow.
So
Uh-huh.
that automatic connection, that person understands you.
Mm.
And I think if like
Yeah.
I went to maybe help people that have went through similar experiences, or
Yeah.
foster kids that we thought we were going to adopt that ended up leaving and
Yeah.
getting reunified, I can speak on that as someone that
Yeah.
actually has been through it. And I
Yeah.
think it's important to
Exactly.
connect with the people that are going
Yeah.
through it. But there's people out there, you
Yeah.
know talking to people but not necessarily going through those experiences. I think
There's,
you
yeah.
already have that kind of connection, emotional connection developed, because you really understand
Mhm.
what that person is going through.
Absolutely. And people, as you say, they connect with that, and they want authentic people to work with. You know, they want authenticity, um, because through that you can model your own, I don't know, vulnerability in a way. You know, because you've been real about your story and you can own it, and then that models to people that, you know what, it's okay to talk about the problems that you've had. It's okay, because we've all had different types of problems, and it's, you know, and you're not weird in any way for having those, and it's okay to talk about them. So if we can own our stories, then yeah, you're giving permission for people to do the same. Yeah,
Yeah, I
some
agree.
good stuff. Yeah.
So what's one piece of advice you can leave with the audience, personal or professional?
um I'd say, oh, it's difficult if you just say one piece of advice, isn't it? Which one to choose from? um I think, don't be scared, and I think you said it actually earlier on, don't be scared to go out there and ask for the help that you need. You know, don't it's okay to, it's not being weak, it's not being weak to go out there and ask for help. You deserve it, you deserve it. And there's, yeah, you deserve to be helped because you're worthy. um, and it doesn't mean you're weak in any way to start showing your vulnerabilities in some way to somebody who cares.
Yeah, and oftentimes you're the barrier in doing so. So you have to kind of come to
Yeah.
terms. And that's the scariest part, just reaching
Yes.
out, or even, starting something or attempting something new, because
Yeah.
humans are a creature of habit. So whenever
Yeah.
something is not comfortable, your psyche tells you no, no, no,
Yeah.
because it's kind of a survival mechanism. Stay in what you know in terms of a habit and don't
That's
kind
it.
of veer away. But when you
Yeah.
kind of make that jump, oftentimes, most likely than not, that decision
Yeah.
is gratifying and leads to a lot more kind of positive actions or interactions in the future.
Absolutely. It takes courage as well to do that, you know. But it's that first step is the hardest, for sure. Yeah,
Well, I really
absolutely.
appreciate you stopping by today. Can you let the audience know how they can find you or anything else you have going on?
Yep, thank you. So they can find me on www.suorosa.com, and that's Suorosa is my website. Have a look around there. You can contact me. You can email me from that site. There's also a Facebook page, Su Orosa, and a personal growth hub called Personal Growth Hub, which is a Facebook group, and that's for support around personal development and mental health as well. And it's all free.
Awesome. Thanks
Yeah.
again for stopping by.